Good evening, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Dotton Dodd. I'll be presenting to you the basics of interviewing. Just a little bit of background about me. I have about 4 or 5 years in workforce development that deals with helping prepare people to go into the workforce, people who are unemployed, who are transitioning. So I have critiqued many resumes. I have coached people on which career paths to take. I also have a background in human resources. So I've interviewed people. I have posted ads, I've made hiring decisions. I also have a teaching background. I taught English as a second language, and I've also taught Spanish, spent some time in Spain. So there's just a little bit about me. Currently, I'm working as a skills trainer at Goodwill of North Georgia. So we will go ahead and get started. All right, so I kind of formatted this presentation with a theater theme. So if you notice some of my titles, rehearsal, showtime, encore, just to make it a little bit interesting. But today we're going to go over 3 basic things. So interview preparation, what goes into that? What are things that you need to be mindful of on interview day? And then what takes place after the interview? What are the things that you should do once the interview has concluded? So those are the 3 main parts of the presentation for this evening. Let's get started with what we call the rehearsal or interview preparation. There's many components to this. Okay, so with this topic, we're going to learn what actions are necessary to prepare for an interview, and then what actions are recommended that you should practice repeatedly. So let's take a look. Let's look at company research. Super, super important. You want to do company research because I guarantee you that the employer is going to ask you a question about their company. What do you know about Coca-Cola? What do you know about UPS? If you're not able to answer that question, it, number one, shows the employer that you're really not interested in the position, you're not serious about the job, and more than likely, you may not move on to the next step of the process. So to be able to answer this very simple question, just do your company research. Also, doing company research benefits you. You have to understand that when it comes to interviewing, it's not just about the company finding or you being a good fit for the company, it's also the company being a good fit for you. So do your research and make sure that that company aligns with your values, that that company fits in with your lifestyle. So how are some ways that we can find out about the company? Go to the company website. Companies these days, since there's so many social media platforms, have pages or they have accounts with Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You want to look at if the company has accounts with certain social media platforms. When you're doing company research, there are some recommended things that you want to focus on. Look at the company's mission. Company's mission deals with why that company exists. The vision deals with what the company is always trying to do, the overall, I guess, goal of the company. And then the company's values is one of the company's values giving back. That's very popular value for many companies. Is it ethics? You want to find those things out because you can use that information in talking about your qualifications. Well, if you get that question, tell me about yourself, and you're a person that loves to volunteer in the community, well, I really would like to work for this organization. I noticed one of your values is giving back. I too love to get back to the community. I'm involved in 2 nonprofits where I am doing a lot of coordination and organizing. Very impressive. Okay. Also, you want to research the employment experience. In the past, I would say maybe 15 years ago, it really wasn't possible for you to have so much available information on people's experience at a company. But thanks to advancements in technology, you do. So you can go on Indeed company reviews to find out about people's experience at the company. If you see a trend in somebody and people saying the same thing about the company, they've had a bad experience, that's something you want to think about. Also, glassdoor.com is another great source for you to find out information about the employee experience at a company. Also, in some cases, people who write testimonials or about their experience, they will tell you the salary. They'll even reveal information such as, oh, this is what this company asked me in this interview. So please utilize those resources: Indeed company reviews and glassdoor.com. All right, so we've talked about company research and the importance of it. That's only a small fraction of your preparation. Let's go on to a very big one, important one: wardrobe. So when in talking about the wardrobe, we're talking about, we want to know about what are the different attire categories, what are the colors that are appropriate for an interview, what shoes are appropriate accessories. When we think about wardrobe, it's not just the clothes, it's the grooming as well. Is it okay for me to have a beard down to here or down to the floor? Hair, how should your hair be arranged? Nails, makeup, all of this makes up the wardrobe. So let's talk about it. We'll first look at attire categories. So we have professional, business casual, and casual, smart casual. Smart casual, that's sort of a new term. If you are applying for a non-office job, let's say for a warehouse job, the dress for the interview very well may be business casual. And if you're not sure, don't be afraid to speak with the recruiter or the person who set up the interview with you and ask them, what is the recommended attire? Is it business casual or professional? That's something you definitely want to ask, because you only have one chance to make a good impression. Business professional, what does that entail? So for ladies, that is a full suit. That is a jacket with a shell. A shell is just basically a shirt that you wear, or a blouse that you wear under a jacket, like I have on a shell right now. Matching pants, low pump, nice pair of flats. That's business professional, full suit. And that can also mean a full skirt suit as well. It can mean a nice tailored dress. Okay. For the men, it's a full suit, tie, a tailored shirt with a collar. You have dress shoes. So it's full suit for men. That is business professional for men and women. Normally, business professional is common for interviews for office roles, law office, customer service representative. Okay. Now let's go into casual, smart casual. It's not common unless you are applying to a very unique company, non-corporate, small mom and pop business. It's very rare that casual, smart casual is okay. When we say casual or smart casual, we're saying a pair of jeans with a blazer, some cropped pants for ladies. Those are examples of casual or smart casual. The people that you see here in the picture, hopefully you can see that, those are examples of outfits that you would wear on a casual Friday if you're in an office environment. Okay. If you are working in a labor intensive environment, maybe where you're doing warehousing or you're doing construction, then casual is completely acceptable once you get the job. Okay. All right, so we talked about the different attire categories: professional, business professional, casual, business casual, and then just plain casual or smart casual. So now let's talk about color choice, the importance of color choice. Recommended colors for interviews include black, navy blue, gray, or brown, or any type of earth tone. It's okay if you, for example, you see me, I have on a navy blue suit jacket with a fuchsia top. It's a very bright fuchsia top. This is fine. It's a nice contrast. And I actually wore this combination to my interview with Goodwill, and then of course I got the position. I actually got complimented on it. So it's okay if you want to wear like a bright color underneath a dark jacket, but your base colors, your colors for your jacket and your pants should be on the conservative side. So that represents black, blue, gray, brown, a dark olive green. Those are earth tones. And I have a little thing here that kind of tells you what the different colors mean. I didn't even know this existed. For example, it says gray sends a message of calmness and neutrality. So little interesting thing here is called the color message. You can look it up in your spare time. What do your interview clothes say about you? So now let's go on to the shoes. Okay, so ladies, your footwear. You notice I have here ladies' footwear, yes, meaning these are recommended pairs of shoes. So a nice pair of flats or a medium-sized pump. That's completely okay. And also you want to be mindful of if they're not a new pair of shoes, you want to make sure that your shoes don't have a bunch of scuff marks on it, rips or holes. Again, this is the employer's first introduction to you, so you want to make sure your shoes are scuff-free, rip-free, all of that. Okay, the bow, for example, there's a bow on these flats that the bow is not about to come off. You don't want any of that. Doesn't look professional. Men, here are examples of pairs of shoes that you can wear. For the same for you, please make sure that you get your shoes buffed, that they're not all scratched up. Okay, you can, if you need some interview shoes, you can go to a thrift store. Sometimes, and of course, I work at a company that has thrift stores all over the place. Goodwill, you don't even have to use Goodwill. You could use Salvation Army. Sometimes people wear shoes one time and they give them away. You can find some really good deals in thrift stores if you have a very tight budget. You can also go to Marshall's or Ross or just, discount stores to get shoes. Now, footwear that is not recommended. So as you can see, I have these themed shark shoes. Basically, any shoes that would draw attention, any shoes that you would wear to like a nightclub, or shoes like these that I'm displaying is specifically for ladies. You don't want to wear those, because the thing is, you want the interviewer to focus on what you're saying. You want them to focus on your character. Shoes like these, the shark pumps, are distracting. So stay away from shoes. And then ladies, the really super high heels, the 4 or 5 inchers, not recommended. Stick with your medium. You want to play it conservative, especially if you are interviewing for an office type position. Men, if you are interviewing for an office position, you don't want to go with casual shoes. You want to stick with your dress shoes. Now, if you're interviewing for a warehouse position or if it's construction, unless the interviewer or recruiter recommends that you wear professional attire, then typically casual shoes are fine. But again, that's why it's important that when you get that interview, you speak with the recruiter and ask the recruiter or your contact, what is the recommended attire? Okay. Let's move on. So let's go on to accessories. What are recommended accessories? So I don't know if you can see these pictures really well, but the first three images that I have up here, very conservative, doesn't draw a lot of attention. It's simple. You want to keep it simple. Again, you want the interviewer to focus on your character, your personality, and what it is that you're saying, not be distracted by what you have on. Okay. Simple necklace, simple earrings. I have on earrings right now that would be appropriate for an interview. They're not very long, and this is specifically for ladies. They're nice, they're short. Okay. And then men, here's a conservative bracelet that you can put on. Right now, accessories that are not so appropriate. As you can see here, this person looks like they have a replica of a tree branch on their hand. Now, let's say I'm an interviewer and I have a phobia of tree branches because there was something that happened with me as a child. That would really scare me. I would just be turned off. And I don't know if I would be able to focus and move forward. That's not good. You have the pill earrings here. I picked very extreme examples of what type of accessories not to wear. The main thing to remember here is you want to keep it conservative. Maybe, you like to express yourself in accessories. Well, the interview is not the time to do that. Okay. We have a necklace here, a necklace for a man that has an eye in the middle of it. Not good. You're not trying to draw attention to your accessories. You want attention on how you are expressing that you're qualified for the position. Also, let me comment on nose rings. That seems like it has become very popular. If you are applying for, and I keep saying office role because I realize that some of you, if you are looking for work, it may not be an office role, it may be a warehouse role. But if it's an office role, but it's somewhere in the office, you may not want to do the nose ring. Again, keep it conservative. Kind of get a feel for the company culture. Perhaps you can put it back in once you get that job and that's acceptable within the company's culture. But for the interview, I would go ahead and remove the nose ring just to be on the safe side. Okay. Tattoos. Let's go ahead and talk about that. If you have tattoos, it's recommended if you're applying for a non-labor intensive position that you try to cover those up. So just something to think about. And now if you have a tattoo in a place where it's not possible to cover it up, then there's just no way you can cover it up, then just, take your chances. But it is recommended if you have tattoos and things like that to cover it up, especially if you're applying for an office role. In the warehouse, or if you're going into construction, it's really not that big of a deal. Okay. And mainly in construction, warehousing, those recruiters and interviewers want to make sure that you can handle the job, you can handle the pace, you can lift, you are very productive, you get along with people. Okay. All right, let's go on to grooming now. We've talked about the different types of attire categories, the colors, shoes, make sure your shoes look neat, accessories. And so now let's get into the grooming. Let's talk about hair and facial hair. All right, so my first row of images are non-recommended styles. So if you see the first female here, she wears the style very well. It looks nice on her. However, for an interview, it's not appropriate. If we're talking about hair color, you want to stick with the natural hair colors, hair colors that people are born with. Your blacks, your browns. Some people naturally have red hair, but you want to stick with the natural hair colors. Okay. Now, let's go on to the next image. There's an image guy here with a really thick beard, and then his mustache just kind of goes sticking straight out in both directions. Now, there's an exception to this. There are some religions, or there's religion that in which men they wear a really full beard. Okay. If it is your religion, okay, to wear a full beard, that's one thing. There is a law that says that employers cannot discriminate against you based on religion and features and all of that. But if you're just doing it because it is a style now for men to wear full beards, it's become a popular trend within the past 2 or 3 years. If it's just you're just liking the trend, I would recommend that you shave it down and have it clean cut and close to your face. Especially if you're applying for a leadership position, a managerial position. You notice the higher you go up in an organization, especially if you're talking about a corporation, a lot of those men don't have facial hair. Okay. If you have a beard due to religious reasons, I would just ask your point of contact or your recruiter, I am applying for this customer service role. How is this company about, beards for religious reasons? Because I have this beard due to my religion. I would ask the recruiter that. Okay. And you see this other guy, obviously this is not appropriate. His hair is sticking all out. You want your hair to be neatly arranged. Okay. Let's go down to this bottom row, which shows recommended styles. You can't go wrong with the bun. Okay. I am a big fan of the bun. I'm wearing one right now. It's nice, neat, it's conservative. This next lady, the next image, is a lady with a natural hairstyle. For my fellow citizens who are African American ladies, a lot of us are wearing natural hair. So this particular individual has her hair twisted, and she has it pinned down. That is perfectly fine. It's all twisted up. It looks neat. It's good. Okay. You may have a question about cornrows. Are cornrows appropriate? Okay. As long as they're going straight back and it's not all different types of colors, cornrows are okay. I interned at the Chick-fil-A corporate office when I was in college, and Chick-fil-A is very conservative. I wore cornrows to my interview, but my cornrows were very neat. I had them back, and I got the internship. So there's not anything wrong with cornrows. Gentlemen, let's move on to you. Nice trimmed hair. If your hair is grown out a little bit, make sure it's neat and it's just not sticking all over the place. Okay. We have some men who have dreadlocks. Okay. It is okay to wear locks, even in an office environment, but they need to be neat. Okay. If you are applying for a role where you're going to be interfacing with customers, you're going to be in an office environment. I don't know if you're going to be really successful in getting the role if you have 15 inches of new growth. Need to get it twisted. Okay. Make it look neat. Like this gentleman here in the picture, his dreads are very neat. He has them down. You can wear them back. Those are all acceptable. Okay. Let's go on to nails. All right. So again, consistent theme of me talking about your wardrobe and how it should look. Keep it simple. Keep it conservative. You're trying to get your foot in the door. You're trying to get the job. Okay. If you want to express a little bit more of yourself, get to know the culture, and then do that. But you're trying to get the job. All right. So if we see these nails, ladies, for those of you who like to go and get your nails done, these nails that you see in the picture, the white nails, number one, they're too long. And to me, those look like weapons because they have the pointy tips. That's a major distraction. And if you're applying for, let's say, a data entry job, I don't know how you would be able to type with those nails. Not appropriate. We also have the nails over here that are blue, just all kinds of designs. Not so appropriate if you're applying for an office role. Again, just keep it simple. If you go down here to the bottom, If you look at the image at the bottom, you see examples of just one basic color. If you have one nail that has a design on it, like diamonds or studs or something, that's fine. But you see here, their nails are simple. The interviewer would not get distracted by them, or you don't want that to be the most memorable thing about your interview is your nails. You want it to be what you said, how you express yourself, and your character. All right, last topic for grooming, makeup. For those of you who wear makeup, let's take a look. So my first row of images, not recommended. So this lady here with the red lipstick, I mean, it looks nice, it's neat, but it's a little too dramatic. And it's more appropriate for perhaps a nightclub or going out, going to a party. This is not appropriate for an interview. Okay. Again, want the interviewer to focus not, or the most memorable thing about you is to be your makeup. You want it to be what you're saying. This lady with the purple blush, too much, not appropriate for an interview, more appropriate for a party. Okay. We go down here to the bottom. You notice that the two ladies, their makeup is very basic. And we're talking about lipstick. You want to stick with a neutral color, a gloss. That's recommended. The lady on the right here, she has makeup on, but you really can't tell. It's very well blended in, not a lot of dramatic eyeshadow and all of that. It's very basic. Again, you want to remember, keep it simple. All right, so we've talked about wardrobe, preparing for the interview. What is the recommended wardrobe and all these different aspects of the wardrobe? Maybe you thought it was just the clothes. Well, it's much more. Let's move on. How else do we prepare for the interview? So the big major part, or the last part of the preparation, are the questions. Right. So we're not going to go over every single common question that an interviewer would ask, but we're going to go over some really common ones. Okay. Questions that you should anticipate. Tell me about yourself. Situational behavioral questions, non-traditional questions, trait questions. So we're going to go into a little bit more detail about what those look like and how you should respond. So let's start first with tell me about yourself. You must be prepared to answer this question. It is asked in all interviews. Okay, so when it comes to tell me about yourself, it is not time for you to talk about your love for petunias in the garden and going for hikes in the park and your family. It's great that you have 3 wonderful kids and a husband. Okay, but that's not the time to talk about this. It's amazing that you are from France or from your Canadians, you're born in Canada, but that is not how you want to respond. When the employer says to you, tell me about yourself, that is an opportunity for you to start talking about your qualifications for the role. All of your responses should be tailored around addressing what the employer wants to hear, and the employer wants to hear how you're qualified for the position. Do you have the skills that were listed in that job ad? That's what the employer is listening for, and you want to give the employer just that. Okay, so in the tell me about yourself response, there are 3 parts. First part is background overview. 2 statements. You're talking about areas of experience, what industries you've worked in, how many years, the different positions you've held, types of companies that you've worked for, and number of years. And I'm going to show you an example in just a moment. Second part of your response deals with accomplishments, achievements, or strengths that you have. You want to mention 1 to 2 and give an example or supporting details. Okay. The third part of that response deals with your career intentions. What are your current career goals? What are you looking to do? That is the structure of the tell me about yourself response. And we're going to look at an example. Before we look at that example, I must advise you that you do not go over a minute. Okay. When you are giving responses during an interview, you don't want to be long-winded, because the truth is 9 times out of 10, that employer has so many people to interview, and they have to get through so many interviews by the end of the day. You want to be respectful of the time. So it should be anywhere between 30 seconds and a minute, no longer than a minute. Let's look at an example. So I have, let's say this person, well, obviously this person is applying for a customer service job. I have 5 years of experience in customer service in the retail and insurance industry. That's my background. That's my overview. Next part. As a contact center agent for State Farm, I acquired 150 new customers in 1 year, which is 20% above average. So I just gave you an accomplishment, achievement, and strength. I'm highly productive. Okay. Now let's move into the third part of my response. I'm looking to work for a company that is constantly seeking ways to innovatively serve its customers. Additionally, a company where I can utilize my talents to help that company achieve its goals. So that's an example of talking about what your career intentions are. Now, if you're interested, really interested in this company that you're interviewing for, you want to throw in, I'm looking to work for a company such as UPS, where there's a great emphasis on efficiency, something to that effect. Okay. Again, you want the employer to know that you're interested in the job. It's not just a paycheck for you, and that you're qualified. Okay. So we've talked about the tell me about yourself response and the 3 parts of that response. Let's go on. So the next most common type of questions in an interview are situational behavioral, and these are becoming more common because these types of questions tell an employer how experienced you are, what it is that you put on your resume. Can you articulate it? Can you talk about it? Okay. Asking the situational behavioral questions helps an employer determine your skill level. Okay, you said that you know about Microsoft Office Suite. Okay, can you talk about it? Can you talk about what you did with it? Okay, can you talk about its functions with no problem? Okay, that's why it's so important. Whatever you put on your resume, you must be ready to explain it. Okay, don't put anything on your resume that you're not able to articulate or explain. You're setting yourself up for trouble. Employers ask situational behavioral questions to determine problem-solving skills, right? So how do we respond to a situational or behavioral question? Well, you answer it using the STAR method, right? What does STAR stand for? S is situation. So in your response to one of these questions, you first give background information. That's S, situation. Next, you go into the task. What were you required to do in the situation? A is for action. What did you actually do? Okay. And then R is result. What was the outcome? That is the STAR method response. And it's great for you, especially when you're practicing for interviews, to structure your responses this way, because it helps you organize your thoughts, and it comes out in an organized way in which the employer can understand. Okay, this is what this person did. This was the outcome. Let's look at an example. Okay. All right, so let's just say the question is, tell me about a time you had a challenge and how you overcame that challenge. So this person is answering that question with this response using the STAR method. In my current job, my boss told me 2 hours before my shift ended that I needed to prepare a 30-minute presentation on a new program in our department. So there's your situation. There is a little bit of the task. I had to present it to the director team at 8:30 a.m. the next day. Situation task. All right, let's go into action. I was able to complete the presentation by the deadline. That is what actually happened. That's what I actually did. My performance was received so well that I was asked to travel to other sites to give the presentation. That is the outcome. So that is an example of a STAR response: situation, task, action, result. That's how you want to structure your responses. And you want to keep it brief. It shouldn't be a 3-4 minute explanation of what happened. It should be minute 30 seconds, no more. All right. Let's go on to non-traditional questions. Now, you may have not experienced this in interviews that you've had, but you need to be prepared for it just in case these questions do come up. Okay. Why do employers ask what we call non-traditional questions? Well, it's to test your ability to think on your feet. It's to test how you handle and or problem solve in unfamiliar situations. They also ask these questions to get a different perspective of your personality. There's a variety of reasons. These are the various reasons why employers ask what you may consider crazy questions. Okay, so let's look at some examples of non-traditional questions. If you could be any animal, what would you be? If you could be any superhero, who would you be and why? How many pennies can fit in the Washington Monument? Is that crazy or what? So let's look at how to respond to some of these. For the identity questions, you want to pick someone or something that highlights your best qualities. So for the animal, and I actually have a sample response, you want to pick an animal that has traits that connect with your personality, or traits that you have, and traits that would make you a good match for the job. Okay, same thing for the superhero, right? For the crazy mathematical questions, how many pennies can fit in the Washington Monument? Are you kidding me? So don't panic. Don't focus on trying to get the answer right. The employer's not interested in the right answer. It's not about the correct answer. What you want to have, the way you want to handle a question like that is you want to describe the strategy that you would use to figure it out. Walk the employer through a strategy. Are you able to come up with something on the spot on how to get to how many pennies would fit in the Washington Monument? Okay, let's look at a sample response of one of these non-traditional questions. If I could be any animal, I would be a cheetah. Cheetahs are swift. I'm a person who thinks quick on his or her feet and typically completes tasks before their deadline. Okay, so let's say that you are applying for a fast-paced, high-pressure job, and this question is asked, and you embody or you have the characteristics of a cheetah, then this would be a great response. Okay. All right, let's look at trait questions. What do I mean by trait questions? Okay, so why do employers ask trait questions? The employer wants to determine your fit for the position. So the employer has listed these skills, the type of environment or type of culture the company has in the job ad. Sometimes you get that in the job ad, sometimes you don't. The employer asks these questions to determine how well you would fit in with the team. How well would you fit in with the company culture? Okay. Sample questions. Tell me one strength that you have. I'm pretty sure a lot of you're familiar with that question. What is one of your weaknesses? Okay. For the strengths question, you want to choose a strength that you have and that is related or that would be useful in the position that you're applying for. Better, a strength that the employer would need in the position that you're applying for, that was mentioned in the job ad. I'll go ahead and say this. When it comes to preparing for an interview, that job ad that you found, any additional information you get from the recruiter, those are going to be your best friends or your best resources when it comes to helping you prepare for an interview. Okay. Weakness questions. So for a weakness question, you want to choose a minor one. You don't want to get into personal weaknesses, such as I have a tendency to get tipsy, things like that. You don't want to say that. I recently overcame, substance abuse, things like that. The employer, that's great, but you don't want you don't want that sticking in the employer's mind. You've overcome something, that's great, but that's not something you want to share. What you want to share is something that is neutral, that's minor, and you also want to talk about how you've improved in that area of weakness. I don't like the term weakness. I like area of needed improvement or area of opportunity. I like those terms better, but typically employers ask you, what is one weakness that you have? Okay. Let's look at a sample response of one of these trait questions. I picked the weakness one because a lot of times in my experience of working with people and helping them prepare for interviews, when I do mock interviews with them, they struggle with answering this question, my weakness. So here is something that is neutral, that's understandable. Okay. I have a tendency, what is one of your weaknesses? I have a tendency to overcommit due to the fact of enjoying helping people, the fact that I enjoy helping people. I realize that if I overextend myself, then I risk not completing my tasks or not completing them with quality. What I have started doing is ensuring I have enough time to fulfill my obligations before committing to help someone or get involved with something. So far, it's kept me from overcommitting. So maybe you're somebody who just loves to help people. Well, that's great. You realize sometimes that's not useful because it'll prevent you from accomplishing your own tasks, and you've made improvements. You want to choose weaknesses or areas of opportunity that, like I said, are minor, that are not related to personal struggles and challenges, that are strictly professional, if that makes sense. Okay. And one thing I want to mention, if you are asked the question, tell me one of your strengths, or what is one thing you do phenomenally well, you want to give the strength and you want to give an example. Don't just say, I'm good at building relationships. Okay. Help the employer see how you are good in building relationships. Give details. What is it that makes you so great? So give the strength and give an example. Oh, let's go back. Hold on a second. Trying to go on. There we are. All right, so we've talked about some of the common types of questions that you'll encounter in an interview. So let's talk about tips for practicing your responses. You want to practice your responses, because by you practicing your responses, when you get asked a question, you have a context for what you want to say. You're able to express yourself easier. You're not rambling or searching for words to say because you've rehearsed, you've prepared. Now, you don't want to sound like that you've memorized your responses and you're reading from a script. You want to be able to sound natural in the way that you respond. Okay. Okay. You want to practice your responses to the most common questions. I've included a link here. I'll just go ahead and say the website, thebalancecareers.com, a really good resource for finding out the most common interview questions. Again, the balance, www.thebalancecareers.com. And you can find common interview questions on that website, and a variety of other resources that would help you prepare for the interview. I would suggest that once you get access to a list of like the top 10 or the top 20 common interview questions, that you write those questions down, type them out, and then write down your response to them. Okay. If you don't want to write it down or type it out, then record yourself responding to those questions. Review your responses. Okay. Get it in your head. Now, the very questions that you practice responding to, the employer may not ask that exact question, but a similar question. For example, I would say, tell me one of your strengths. Is similar to tell me something, tell me one of your greatest accomplishments. Okay. Kind of similar questions. Right. Something else I would recommend is doing a mock interview and getting feedback. You cannot go wrong with that. You may ask yourself, well, I don't know, how can I do that? Well, you can go to a career center. I know at the Goodwill Career Centers, there are career coaches there, and you can request an appointment with one of those career coaches and ask them to assist you with a mock interview. So that is something that you can do. And you want to get feedback. Okay, that's another great way to practice for the interview, but you want to practice. You don't want to go in and wing it. That is not the way to go. You only get one chance. Okay, you've gotten past the stage where you've impressed the employer with your resume, which got you the interview. Now you're in the interview and you're trying to get that job. Okay. All right, so we've gone over all the things that you would do to prepare for the interview. We've talked about doing your company research to help you formulate questions that you have for the employer, and to also show that you are very interested in the company. We talked about wardrobe and what that looks like, and then we talked about some common questions, and I also gave you a resource that you can use to find more common questions. So now let's talk about the interview day, showtime. All right, so how do you perform your best on interview day? We're going to talk about pre-arrival do's and don'ts, and this is taking into consideration if you're doing a face-to-face interview, because we know, because we're in the pandemic, a lot of interviews have gone virtual, but you still have employers who are doing face-to-face interviews. So I cover both of those. Arrival impression, communication, interview types. So we're going to cover all of that on things you need to consider for interview day. So pre-arrival, arrival. All right. You want to leave your house at least 1 hour before report time. Arrive at least 30 minutes prior to report time. So if you are taking public transportation, you really need to plan. This time is actually going to be increased. You have to consider bus times. And then also, because we're in the pandemic, MARTA has cut out some routes. So you want to call, you want to go online, research, and let's say your interview is at 12 p.m. And let's say the bus comes to the stop that's closest to you. There's a bus that comes at 8:30. There's a bus that comes at 11. You want to take the 8:30 bus. If that's your only means of transportation, it's better to be very early than risk the chance of being late. Okay, you may have to wait a second, but you want to be on time. And especially, if that's your only mode of transportation, you're gonna have to take that earlier bus. Okay, you have to account for, if you're taking public transportation, delays in MARTA. I remember when I was interning at the Home Depot corporate office, I had to take 3 buses in a train to get to my destination. I started at 4 in the morning and didn't get home until 6:30. It wore me out. But that's what I had to do to get there on time. Okay. Um, you want to consider traffic. You want to look at traffic reports. You want to get up and so you can plan your route. One thing that I recommend doing if you're taking your own car is, if you're not familiar, if you know where the place is, still use your GPS. Okay. Because if there's a major traffic jam or a major accident, the GPS is going to give you an alternative route. Okay. That's something I do with my own job. Even though I know where I'm going, sometimes I'll put the GPS on if it's raining. And because I live in Jonesboro, so it'll tell me, oh, take 675 or take 75. Okay. Ask your interview contact about parking. That's going to influence what time you need to leave. Do you have to go to a parking garage? Is it that you pull up in a parking lot and the building's right there? Or do you have to, is it going to be a 5-minute walk from the parking deck to the building? You need to ask about all of that. If you can and you're able, I would recommend doing a dry run. Dry run meaning you pretend it's interview day and you either do the bus route, or you're doing public transportation, or you drive there to see what the experience is like. Okay. Now, if you're not doing a face-to-face interview, these are things that you need to consider. You want to sign in at least 10 minutes prior to report time and mute your mic. It would just be really horrible if you did your due diligence, you signed in 10 minutes before time, and you're having a little bit of a argument with your spouse, you say some choice words and the mic is not muted. That's not going to be good. Sign in 10 minutes before, mute your mic. Okay. Another virtual tip, check your live profile appearance. I know on Zoom and several of the video conferencing apps, before you decide to join the meeting, you can see yourself. Check how you look. Okay. You may have a hair sticking out or something's not right. Before you join that meeting, check yourself. Also, you want to test out the video conferencing app 1 to 2 days before you have to interview. Perhaps you have to download Blue Jeans. That is a video conferencing app. Maybe it's not working on your phone. So all of that needs to be worked out before interview day. Okay. You want to select a quiet space. If your house is not that space, go to a friend's house and have the interview. It would be horrible if you're trying to get through the interview and little Johnny's screaming. If you can go to another location, a quiet location, that's what you want to do. All right, arrival tips. So this is for face-to-face interviews. Be mindful how you exit the car. So a lot of people think, when you sit down and you start answering the questions, that's when the interview starts. No, the interview starts way before then. It starts when you have contact and you're communicating with the interviewer. Okay, they're getting impressions of you. Okay, your ability to follow through. If the recruiter's asking you for information, you're interviewing. Okay, if you're getting out the card, papers are flying everywhere, and one of your potential future coworkers could see that, and if they're doing they're reviewing all the applicants for the day, and the employer had maybe a little bit of a question about you, that person saying, well, is that the person who had this? And oh yeah, I saw him or her get out the car and just everything was unorganized. And I'm not surprised that you said that some of their answers were a little unorganized. Be mindful of how you exit the car. Okay. Be cordial with all staff. I know some people who've not been considered for interviews because they were mean to the receptionist. Be cordial with all staff, custodial staff. Okay. Because believe it or not, it's not just the interviewer that has a say-so in whether you get hired. What they report back to the interviewer, it counts. It matters. Check your appearance in the bathroom. That's why you want to get there early. Place your phone on vibrate or silent once you get on the premises. Okay. You want to relax and you want to smile often. Don't look so rigid and tense. Okay. I'm going to move on here because we're almost out of time. Let's look at communication, right? If we're talking, let's look at nonverbal communication. So that's what we don't hear, is what we mainly see. So for virtual, you want to look directly into the camera. It's very tempting with the video conferencing apps and Zoom to look at yourself, and you're just looking at yourself and you're looking at the people, but you can't really establish that eye contact if you're not looking directly in the camera like I'm looking now, okay? If you're face-to-face, you want to give direct eye contact. Now, every once in a while you can, look up or look to the side, but the majority of the time your eyes should be locked in with the interviewers. If you are doing face-to-face, wait for direction to be seated. That's just common practice. Do correct posture. You shouldn't be slumping. Avoid distracting behaviors such as if you're in a swivel chair. Those are those chairs that turn around. You may be a little nervous. Avoid that because that's distracting. Ladies, if you have braids, you're twirling the braids, or if you have long hair, you're kind of messing with it. You have a necklace here. Maybe it's a pearl and you're just kind of playing with it, legs shaking, tapping. Avoid all of those behaviors. Avoid speaking in a monotone voice. My name is Jacqueline and I'm applying for the position. Wow, it really sounds like you're interested. It doesn't sound, you're saying you're interested, but the tone of your voice is saying something completely different. Have inflection in your voice. That's when your voice goes up like this and it comes down. All right, verbal communication. Avoid using slang. You know what I mean? I hope that makes sense. Okay. Don't use slang. Try to cut down on filler phrases. Sometimes when you are asked a question and you're a little thrown off, you may use a lot of uhs, ums. Reduce the number of uhs and ums. Speak clearly. Make sure you're speaking with a good volume, like I am. Don't speak so low that they can't hear you. Enunciate your words, meaning pronounce your words. Saying versus saying. Okay. Keep your answers brief. We talked about that already. Answer all questions. If there's a question that the employer asks that you're not sure about, the worst thing you can do is not answer the question. You can stall. This has happened to me in interviews. They ask a question, you're not sure of the response right there. You can ask again, can you repeat the question? I just want to make sure I understand it correctly. While the employer is repeating the question, that buys you time to think of a possible response. Okay. Let's go into interview types. All right, so you have one-on-one interview. Everybody's familiar with that. You're interviewing with one person. You have a panel interview. You interview with two or more people. Okay, you're getting questions from both of those people. When you're responding, you're giving eye contact to both of those people. Okay. Group interviews. That's when you interview with several candidates. The thing you want to keep in mind about a group interview, you want to be a good listener. You want to be yourself. Don't try to take over by answering or hogging up all the communication time. Be confident. It's a good practice for you to remember people's names. So if the question has gone to Sarah, you can say, well, like Sarah said, it's good for you to apologize to the customer if that customer is not satisfied. For a phone interview, interviewer initiates contact. If that person calls you, you want to make sure you're in a quiet area and with good reception. Okay. Test out the reception. If you don't have a lot of bars in one area of the house, that's not the area of the house you want to be in. You want to go somewhere else. Video interview. That's interview via software like Zoom, Blue Jeans, Google Meets. Unstructured interview, it's kind of casual in nature. The employer may ask you one question, and based on your response, they'll formulate the next question. Okay. And then structured interview, very common, same questions asked to each candidate. So the same 5 questions I asked person number 1, I'm asking those same 5 questions to person number 2. All right. Now let's talk about after the interview. I know we're running low on time. So what's the encore all about? The ending. Learn how to successfully conclude the interview. So we're going to touch on questions, the importance of questions, the thank you message, and the 30, 60, 90-day plan. Okay. You want to ask questions because it shows your interest in the job. If you conclude the interview and the employer asks, do you have any questions, and you say no, more than likely you may not get a call back. You want to ask questions. You want to have at least 3 or 4. Okay. Some suggested questions to ask. Ask if the position is a replacement or newly created. What is the most challenging aspect of the position? Ask the interviewer what he or she likes about their job and her company. If the employer has a hard time answering that, that's a little concerning. Ask about new goals or current initiatives the company has. So what new initiatives do you all have for this year or that you're working on? Very good questions. Don't ask questions that could be answered on the website. That's so important that you do your company research. Okay. And the muse.com, that is another great source for interviewing or interview preparation. Let's go to the thank you message, right? The thank you message, it's an opportunity for you to, another opportunity for you to mention your qualifications. You thank the employer for their time and just mention, I understood that you mentioned that you really need people who are committed. You can talk about how you're committed in your current job. You want to send that message within 24 to 48 hours of the interview. You can do it through email or post-to-mail. Post-to-mail is a nice touch. Not a lot of people send letters these days. 3 to 6 statements. It shouldn't be a whole storybook. 3 to 6 statements. You want to keep it brief. You give your statement of gratitude. Restate a key qualification that addresses a challenge. Okay. Perhaps you ask the employer, what is the most challenging thing about this position? Perhaps you're able to handle that, and you can mention that in the thank you note. Okay. And then you want to ask for the job. I really enjoyed meeting with you today. I would love to join the ABC team. You ask for the job. Okay. Now, last thing, if you are applying for a managerial or leadership position, it is recommended, if you want to stand out, that in addition to the thank you note, that you present a 30, 60, 90-day plan. So if you're manager, assistant manager, director, assistant director, executive roles, recommended. You talk about your intentions for the first 30, 60, 90 days on the job. The questions that you ask an employer about challenges and pain points helps you draft that document. So in your questions to the employer, you want to ask them, or what are things that you would like to see improved? Or what are things that you would like to see get better? Or how would you like to see this position done differently? And you use those responses from the employer to help you craft your 30, 60, 90-day plan. Okay. And if you want to get templates or ideas of how to craft that, you can go to the muse.com, THEMUSE.com. Okay. And that is the end. It's been a pleasure sharing this information with you. I wish we had more time. Again, my name is Jacqueline Dodd. Email dotandjd@gmail.com and my LinkedIn information is on the screen as well. Have a great evening, everyone, and stay safe.